Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another amazing episode of Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. Thank you so much for coming in. My name is VashSky, just a theme park extraordinaire here at That Park Place Network, but the real extraordinaire, the real expert, the real person who lived it and saw it and did the thing, Lou Wasserman's Ghost. What is going on? Good sir.
Oh, same thing that always goes on a happy Sunday afternoon or morning or whatever is it's Vash and you. And Lou.
Oh, stop it. They're all here for you, Lou.
This is Palm Springs suntanned Vash, no doubt. Back from your 2-week sojourn in the desert, so.
Yes, yeah. We went out there, just beautiful. I know it's hot this week. I guess it was up to 120 the last day or so. Man, crazy. It wasn't that hot over there when I went there. It was actually cooler in Palm Springs than it was actually in Phoenix, Arizona. So that was pretty cool. A bit of an unexpected surprise.
Heat. It's a dry heat.
It is a dry heat.
Say, except for that giant lagoon at Cotino. I was watching your coverage of all of the details of that, and you did a great job. It's not very attractive.
Yeah, isn't it, right?
It's more Gensler than Disney. Let's put it that way.
That's a great point. I wasn't super impressed with it. We did go down to the site. We got a little bit more information from the representatives there.
Right.
And I don't know. Coming out of it, I think I agree with you, Lou. It's like, yeah, some of these homes, I mean, you might have interiors of concept art and stuff and so forth, but you look at it, and it's like a bunch of rock. It's a bunch of dwellings that kind of look industrial.
Have you seen drawings of the one in Carolina? I wonder if it's very similar with a very, very limited facade, overlay to make it feel a little more southern. But I don't know. That's the other thing. I still think the one in Carolina is going to get a lot of Northeast people retiring to it, whereas this one, it will be get out of town from the local area, from LA, from San Francisco. So
right.
I don't know. It's a different market. It just is.
It definitely is. I don't think they've
all the pictures of grandparents and grandkids. I see very few parents in there, whereas those I call them Sims bots that are in those animations that they have are all 30-something yuppies. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to have a bunch of young families here, and they even make a point that a lot of the residents will be 55 and older.
Well, they have one area for that, and that's attractive, in a lot of mobile home parks and retirement communities because they figure it's not going to be as noisy and not have a bunch of little kids running around. So,
right.
Anyway.
Right. I agree with you, though. I think I don't know how successful this is going to be. I know it's a new venture for the Walt Disney Company, and just taking a look at the site when I was there, I mean, the scale of the project is massive. And I think my mom actually asked the representative there. She was like, what makes this Disney? Because I agree with you, Lou. It's more Gensler than Disney. And they're like, well, we have this club, you see, that you can enroll in when you actually buy in. And it's like, wait a minute, I got to be part of a club?
I heard you guys talk about that. And I'll tell you something. The analogy is to golf communities where you can buy a house there and not necessarily buy the full golf membership, or just buy what they call a social membership where you can charge things in the bar and eat at the restaurant once a week or something, as opposed to also getting the tea times and everything included. So I think that's the comparison.
Well, sure, but I just found it interesting how that was their go-to answer for looking for that Disney difference. And it kind of should be baked into the cake.
Well,
and yet it's an upcharge.
So should Genie and Lightning Lane and everything else be baked into the cake. Do you remember when a ticket to Disneyland meant you could go on all the rides on an equal basis and not have to pay extra? It's like there's a. I'm trying to think if it's. I think it's Groucho, but it might be W.C. Fields. There's a scene where the waiter's got all the drinks, and he holds up a bill of some denomination. And the guy slows down and smiles, and he takes the drink, and the guy's about to reach for the tip, and he holds it up, and he says, "Come back in 10 minutes with another drink, and I'll give you another look at it." He puts it back in his pocket. It's one of these kind of teasers, but it never really pays off. Anyway, Anyway,
Well, it's kind of funny you mentioned the one ticket price there. In Disneyland's history, kind of relatively a short amount of time, because in the 1980s they kind of allow for people not to have to buy ticket books in order to ride the attractions, and then as soon as the mid 1990s they introduced FastPass, and that whole thing changes.
well,
So,
and really they were goaded into that one ticket deal by
mhm.
POP. Pacific Ocean Park.
Yeah.
It stood for Pacific Ocean Park,
Mhm.
but they also called it pay one price, making a big difference, saying you don't have to get nickel and dime like you do at that Disney place, and you get the ocean. So anyway,
That's a fair point.
yeah.
It's
I
just
remember being able to drive right up there where it says exit, and sometimes even park close to there. Those
yep.
were the days
Oh
without an
man.
extra upcharge, as they say.
Ah, the Disneyland parking lot. And that's the thing, without the upcharge, you're right about that, Lou, because Walt Disney was very much like, hey, you know what? We're going to give people a fair deal here. And I think he set the price to like a nickel or something in the beginning. And it was like a quarter all the way up until like the Michael Eisner era. It was insane.
Yeah.
And then it was like, ooh, this could be a source of revenue. And now it's like 35 or whatever. And it's terrible. But and that's if you get through security. Security is another thing now where it takes an hour to get through and all kinds of stuff. Oh,
Yeah.
it's so complicated.
But
But
of course, as I was saying the other day when that unfortunate event happened,
mhm.
I long for the days when hearing something go pop, you don't first think it must be a gun. You
Yeah,
do think it must be a balloon. There were days
yeah,
like that, folks. Honest. I see a lot of people in the chat talking about, am I going to give you some history? Well, ask some questions, you'll get some answers.
that's right. And we actually did have somebody who chimed in with a question right off the bat right here. Juliet, always asking what our favorite movies are. Very much appreciate it. Good afternoon, Vash and Lou. Your favorite movies from 2000 to 2009, gentlemen, please. And
The
chat.
first 10 years of the new century, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did take a look. In case you didn't know out there, IMDb has lists of the top 100 movies of X years.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at the one for 2000 to 2009,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a remarkable decade for franchises beginning. What do I mean? Well, there you can see on the screen the Dark Knight, the Christopher Nolan Batman trio is in that
Mm-hmm.
decade. Also in that decade is the first and then ongoing new James Bond with Daniel Craig. And
Right.
also in that decade is, there's a bunch of things that got started then, or that were the last time that something really good was independent of the mouse before being taken by it. For
Mm-hmm.
example, Iron Man was that decade,
Mm-hmm.
starting the real modern MCU without all the scattershot stuff of before that. And of course, you can't ignore Team America, World Police. America, blank, yeah. Anyway, and Lord of the Rings, of course. But anyway, an interesting decade, interesting decade, and a lot of
Lou?
great Pixar stuff that was also about
Yes.
to become Disney, like Up and like Wall-E and like there's some of them. Anyway, I'm not going to pick one as my favorite. Are you?
What? You gotta pick one. That's what Juliet asked for. I think I gotta pick one.
Well, look, if I have to apply my standard rule, which is something that you've seen 100 times,
Uh-huh.
and if it's on the air and you happen to be going through channels and it's up, that you stay
Right.
all the way through,
Right.
it's got to be the Chris Nolan Batman movies. It really
Yeah.
does for me.
Yeah,
Of all the things on that list,
I agree.
the same way that Godfather is in its time, and the same way that the Connery Bonds are in their time. So
Yeah. Dark. I would say the Chris Nolan Batman films. Now, look, obviously the MCU is launched with Iron Man, but Iron Man doesn't get going really without those Chris Nolan Batman films. The way they just changed the game. They changed the way
Yeah.
you looked at superhero films. Transcended that genre, and so Dark Knight has got to be. That's got to be.
And what
so
they
good.
did, although it's not really quite the same as the source material, they mirrored what the comic books already did when they started giving a book to a new person and letting them do their own take on it, like Frank Miller with the Dark Knight books. So
Right.
anyway,
Right. So good, but I thought it was a great observation that you made there, Lou. The beginnings or the features of many franchises within this kind of decade right here. Even like the number one on this list, which I don't know if I would necessarily agree with, but Gladiator, it's now a franchise, right? The Gladiator 2 is coming out, so
well, I'm gonna
pretty
say
amazing.
to that the same thing I said to the genre guys last night,
Uh-huh.
which is when somebody said, "Well, but they're making another one. They're making a sequel," and I said, "Let's see it when it actually gets out
Mhm.
there,"
Yeah.
because I mean, Gladiator, they've been talking about doing another one of those pretty much since the first movie, and it
Right.
took that long. Another one we did on Genre Guys recently that's in that decade is
Mhm.
Master and Commander,
Yeah.
which should have been more movies and wasn't.
Yeah.
Um, and then what we did last night, you said you wanted to talk about the Genre Guys a little bit. Um,
Yes, I
and the
did.
most recent one, which none of you have seen yet, because we do them usually on Saturdays, and they get put out on the air for members only
Mhm.
at the Pro Channel,
Mhm.
and then come here. As you can see, you can tell by the way the already came here ones. By go back to that picture again. The
Oh yes, yes, yes.
the famous gray Ferris wheel, or silver, I guess it is officially, right? But anyway, we did a movie that's going to make a lot of you mad at me because I hate it so. Because I think it's I don't hate it. I just a lot of you treasure and love it, and I don't know why. And that is Spaceballs. We did last night. So I'm going to get a lot of flack because I know a lot of people when we told people within the channels that we were going to be doing that. Oh golly, that's oh, I love that. Oh, well, you're wrong.
Man, shots fired across the bow
It's
there, Lou.
it's
Uh,
it's mediocre at best, but not this movie, Sorcerer, which a lot of people have never seen. Oh
mhm.
boy,
Yeah.
you want to be grabbed by the short and curlies and dragged through an ordeal for 2 hours of intensity. This is the movie. Uh,
Yes. It's
hey, it's
intense.
got Roy Scheider and it's got dynamite and rain and bridges and
Yeah.
bad guys and other bad guys and even more bad guys. And anyway,
It it's a wild movie. So what I do with the genre guys is I always put on the original and then kind of listen to it and kind of say, okay, here's how the end's gonna go in my head and everything. And as and sometimes that precludes the me watching the film. And so in this case that's what happened. I was listening to Hangry Tables, and I was like, he's going through it, and I'm like, he was really like affected by this movie. I'm like, what are we in for here? So immediately got a copy of the film, turned it on, and man, that
yeah,
like you said, it just grabs you by the seat of your pants and just drags you through this crazy ordeal, starting with the initial vignettes and then
yes.
like going into the actual story.
And for
itself.
those who don't know, it's about
Mhm.
four guys in different parts of the world, in
Mhm.
America, in France, in the Middle East, in South America, who all get in big trouble and have
Right.
to run away and escape and disappear somewhere. And they all wind up in this crappy little mining town
Mhm.
in the middle of nowhere in the jungle.
Mhm.
And they're all looking to somehow make a score so they can pay to get back to the real world somehow
Mhm.
safely and anonymously because there's a price on their head for various
Mhm.
reasons. And this company said, well, we've got this little problem. We had
Mhm.
an oil well blow out, and in order to blow it out again, to explode it so that it turns off the fire where we're losing millions of dollars in burnt up oil, we need to take these two trucks that are full of very old, very leaky, very sensitive, very dangerous dynamite, where the nitroglycerin is literally dripping out of the sticks of dynamite, through the worst road in the history of roads, and deal with storms and collapsing bridges. And basically, the entire Universal Backlot tour happens in this movie.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's so great.
Everything but the shark from Jaws.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And
Perfect
Roy
description.
Scheider is the American one, and so he's the star for us.
Right.
But it's a kick-ass movie. It really is. It really, really is. I
It's
wonder how many people have seen it and know it.
yeah, Captain John D right here. Sorcerer is like an abusive spouse. It hurts, but you go back for more. It's so true. It is.
Yeah,
It is
and Karen,
incredible.
who is such a wonderful, you should be with us sometime on Genre Guys, Karen, because you're such a
Absolutely.
great film historian and memorialist. Mentions The Wages of Fear, which was the original French movie that it was based on. But
Yeah.
anyway,
It,
and
it,
you have to be careful. I think I told this story once on this show way back at the beginning, but we have new
Please.
people, and I notice when I go down and look at the if I scroll down, if those of you in the chat and see the little miniature of the screen down there, it says 21 episodes, which makes today 22 of these things we've done, Vash. That astounds me. But I mentioned when you talk about remakes, the great story that I heard Alfred Hitchcock tell on Dick Cavett's show one night, where he talked about there is a French movie called Diabolique, which is a scary horror movie, where these two women murder this guy in an old clawfoot bathtub with knives. And the story is that Hitch said he got a letter from a lady in England when he did Psycho. And she said, "Dear Mr. Hitchcock, ever since seeing Diabolique, my daughter refused to ever take a bath again because it so traumatized her." She said, "And now she's seen your movie Psycho and she won't take a shower because of the shower scene. She's beginning to smell. What should we do?" And Hitchcock, with that wonderful deadpan look of his, he says, "Dear madam, I suggest you have your daughter dry cleaned." So anyway, there's that. And let's see, guys. Nita, I got a few more of them for you sometime, but yeah, it is a book you want to savor. It is. She's talking about that book. What was it? City of, I don't know why my brain is going to. You probably still have the picture somewhere because you always have all the pictures.
I do. Oh, we referred to it multiple times in multiple weeks. I can't remember. It's the City of Dens. It's give me a second. I've got the photo right here. City of Nets. City of Nets.
Nets, that's it. I was going to say Webs. I don't know why I have Spider-Man on the brain, but
here you go.
Anyway, right City of Webs, which is an interesting history of the 1940s, basically, of Hollywood. Everything, not just artistic and movie, but political, and a lot of interesting stuff about famous European writers, composers, philosophers who came to Hollywood for a quick buck and an escape from the Teutonic leadership of the time, as we have to say for some strange reason, as I learned.
That's fantastic. That's great.
Yeah.
The reason why I brought up the Genre Guys episode, that one in particular, because it kind of inspired me for this show. Because, well, the movie is just, it's crazy. A lot of people may not have heard it because, well, unfortunately timed it came out, 2 to 3 weeks after the original Star Wars in 1977?
Some funny little space jockey show kind of stole its thunder, yeah.
Right. One could say what a Spaceballs was actually based on, right? So,
well, but yeah, there you go. There's 6 degrees of genre-gization. But but see, what's interesting about that is we've talked on the channels in general when these big hits come out or hope to be hits, that a lot of them do very, very big business for the first couple of weeks. But then because they are forced out of the IMAX and big screen and special venue theaters where the prices are higher by the next guy in line, well, that's what happened to Sorcerer. Sorcerer was set to go into, for example, the Chinese Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, where I saw a few weeks before that the original Star Wars. And it was supposed to be there for a couple of weeks, and then it would go away, and then would come this big thing with a proven star, as opposed to those nobody knows them kids in a spaceship with Roy Scheider and William Friedkin, who directed The Exorcist. And after a week, the theater said, we're kicking them out and bringing back the Space Kids because they were doing better business. So it really got hurt by that timing, that's for sure.
Oh, it was terrible. And Obviously there are theories as to, well, okay, even though it may not have, it may not have
Well,
done so well because it was next to Star Wars. I think you actually brought up that William Friedkin, I believe the
yeah,
director.
yeah.
He was famous for The Exorcist, and so this was a very big departure from his prior work.
And when
Maybe
they
that had
named
hurt
it
in some point.
Sorcerer, people thought, well, it must be another movie about witches or the occult or vampires or
Right.
something. And of course, the name Sorcerer comes from the fact that these trucks have a name, and one of them
Yep.
is named. It's painted on the side, Sorcerer.
Yeah.
So anyway,
And it's weird because it's not even the truck that survives. It's the
right,
truck that
right.
blows up. Which is very bizarre, very strange. Maybe you got to work on the branding there, guys. But no,
Well,
obviously that had
Hollywood
hurt
is
it.
Hollywood is famous for bad titles.
And
I don't know how many people out there are fans, as I was and still am,
mhm,
of the book series of over 280 books in 80 languages,
ooh,
The Destroyer, which was made into a movie that they decided, with all these people knowing the name Destroyer, to call Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins. How's that for a cumbersome title to promote? And then I don't remember when I tell these stories. So I'm sorry
mhm,
if you're hearing them again too soon, some of them. But
please.
this guy I knew who had a fantasy novel bought by Disney. They never made the movie, but it was well thought of, and they told him, "We love your book. We want to pay you a lot of money to get the movie rights, but one thing, we need to change the title." He said, "Why?" Well, it had, I forget what it was, but it was some really esoteric, you know,
Sure.
sounded like a quote from Lord of the Rings or something. And he said, Disney, we like to call things what they are, straight front. We make a movie about a pretty woman, we call it Pretty Woman.
Right.
We make a movie about, and now they don't, Snow White, we call it Snow White. And I'm going to use one of those words that I'm not supposed to, so I'll try and clean it
Go
up.
ahead.
But, and this guy, in a fit of pique, said to them, "Well, it's a good thing you didn't make Rain Man. You would have called it My Brother the Artard." So I cleaned it up a little, but so
Well, thank you.
there's titles in Hollywood and all of that.
Oh,
Singing in the Rain was about singing in the rain,
right.
And anyway,
But if you would have called it, I don't know, explosive laden trucks across the, South America.
there you
Maybe
go.
that would have gotten a couple more people in there. We got to workshop that.
Fun
really
and
quick,
games
don't
with
worry about
nitro
that.
and rain. I don't know.
Oh, that's perfect. How do you do this, Lou?
I
Just
don't know.
on your tongue.
I
right there.
don't know. I don't know. It's the music
Well,
of the language. It's just in my head somewhere, and everybody
I
dances to it.
and there's so much stuff connecting to this film. So Captain John D actually brings up a story here. William
Yeah.
Friedkin tried to get Robert Mitchum to
Mitchum.
for the lead role in Sorcerer, and he famously said, "Why would I go to Ecuador for months to fall off a truck? I can do that inside my house."
Yeah.
I think Roy Scheider was pretty decent, and
Oh yeah.
he maybe not the first one that comes to mind for a role like this, but he did really, really well in the role that he was given. And
You believed him as a New Jersey small town hood. That's for sure.
you did, and how he goes crazy in the middle of the jungle is
And
awesome.
the fish out of water of being in that situation.
right.
Great movie. Anyway.
Right. So
What's coming next, or what's just recently come up on Genre Guys here on T3PO?
Well, this is the most recent one. Let me go ahead and get the schedule right here, and I will
Okay.
tell you right now what we got coming up, because I was able to map them all out finally.
Oh, good.
Next one is going to be Who's Afraid? Virginia Woolf.
A movie with some history. And I mentioned on the show the name of, there's a book about the making of that movie and about its origins as a play by Edward Albee. And Mike Nichols, does everybody out there know that Mike Nichols was not born in America? And that's not his original name? And that this was his first film? And that when they went to go cast it, and everybody wanted Dick and Liz because they were the hottest thing in the universe because of Cleopatra and all the antics on there. And supposedly Burton literally told Liz, she wasn't good enough to do this part. And so by golly, she was. And she was much younger than the part called for. So they aged her and they put her in a wig, and she put on 30 pounds, I think it was. And that's a hell of a picture and a story. What else?
The next one after that is going to be, let's see here, 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh yeah, 2010, not 2001, which is Roy Scheider. Yeah.
Okay, then I got my
no. We did
recordings
2010, which is
Gotcha.
I think a more interesting, not as artistic. Kubrick did images like nobody's business, but 2010, which is the sequel, is what Scheider does better than anybody, which is be the audience in a crazy world and be our rep saying, wait a minute, what's going on here? Wait a minute, are you trying to tell me? Wait a minute. And he's the one who gets it when nobody else does and takes us along for the ride. And that's, of course, about what happens with the monolith and what happens with Hal.
Ooh.
And it's done by Peter Hyams, who is a director who was also a very fine oil painter and oil painted his storyboards. How's that for putting time and effort into planning a movie?
That's great. I love that.
Interesting guy. He came one time and I heard him talk about, I guess it was on this picture, come to think of it. But of course he did Outland and Capricorn 1, where the moon landing is a fake and they're chasing the astronauts across the desert so they don't give it away. These are the next ones on Yes, They Are, Juliet. Juliet was asking about, are these the next coming up here? But of course, what I always tell people is if you want to become a member at Pro for a lot more things besides Genre Guides and watch them there, and then they come here 3 months later, watch them a second time and see how your perspective has changed and see how it's fascinating. Because I go back every so often, I'll send a message out to Lauren and to Angry and say, gosh, I just watched the one we did on so-and-so. And you know what? We were really good. Shame on me for being an egotist or something, but it's really kind of fun because when you're in the middle of doing it, just like we are now, you're just jump on the ride and hang on for dear life and see where it goes. So
right, exactly.
And sometimes we show to our discredit, like I probably did last night for all the Spaceball fans. But anyway.
Well, that one's going to be a great one. By the way, guys, if you want to get access to Genre Guides as soon as they are released, go over to WWE Pro's channel, become a member, and you can get access right then. And I'll tell you what.
And last night, talking about, we were doing Spaceballs, which I think is Mel Brooks' least well-done film. And they asked me, well, which ones do you like better? And I said, well, obviously everybody loves, Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. But I talked about High Anxiety, and then we talked about Hitchcock, and of course, High Anxiety is a spoof of Hitchcock, particularly of Vertigo, but also of Hitchcock in general. And we might do a double. We're talking about doing a double feature, the two of them, comparing them. So that'll be interesting. Wouldn't that be fun?
That's a great way of doing that. I'll get a kick out of that. You guys should really pursue that because that's a great way of doing like the original and the parody and seeing the contrasts between them.
Because my biggest complaint with well, you see all this when you see it, but on Spaceballs is it's not a movie. It's a bunch of 5-minute Carol Burnett show sketches, and it's very on the nose and no unity to it, where a great spoof like High Anxiety takes the idea, takes the specific moments we all love to poke fun at, but then builds it into a unified story and a real feature film that works on its own level, even if you never heard the source material. And that's what Spaceballs doesn't do, So, anyway,
Lou about to become the most hated
by certain people. And as I say, if you love it, you love it. And that's the beauty of these things. We don't expect you to say, "Oh, that sounds great," and then watch it and go, "What the hell is wrong with those guys?" and we've had that from within. When Martin Stone, one of our folks on the channel, recommended we do a picture called, well, it was called two things. It was called The Big Carnival
Mm-hmm.
and Ace in the Hole,
Ace in the
which
Hole.
is a really hard-edged,
Oh
rough,
man.
nasty movie with did you watch that one? I forget. Has that already been on here? I think so.
Yes, yes. So
And
that was, I believe, it was
and I
15 or
think it's
16.
brilliant and wonderful, but it is hard to take because they really committed to being a real bastard, So anyway,
That
oh wow,
one was really,
we're getting some
yeah.
money for our popcorn with these movies here, Vash. It's pretty
We
astounding.
are. Let me go ahead and recognize here. By the way, yes, Ace in the Hole is in the queue there. I would recommend a watch for sure. Nita, thank you unbelievably. You're so kind. You're so very, very generous. I do apologize for not getting to your super chat sooner, but we just have such a fun time on here. Thank you so much. An incredibly generous amount. I really enjoy your show. Thank you for teaching and informing fun stuff. Hey, we love bringing it to you. I know Lou loves this. I know he just goes.
All of these movies, one way or another, they may not be my favorites, every single one of them, but they're movies that I know and love and have seen many times, and that I so often will bring up with people now who will say, "Huh?" Even when they have big stars in them, like Kirk Douglas, or we did. Speaking of Billy Wilder, we did. Some Like It Hot. And there's a movie, Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis and Marilyn Monroe, and people say, "What?" They're people who've never heard of it or seen it. So I joked and told people, "Well, next week we're doing a drag show," and they just laughed and said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You'll have to watch and see." Back when it was fun.
That's no, I to dive into these stories in Hollywood history with you, Lou, has just been a pleasure. It's just been a dream come true, and to go over some amazing films of various time periods with somebody who really experienced them has just been a delight.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm not old enough to have seen all of these in first run, but you remember in my day, you had Channel 9 and Channel 13 and Channel whatever running movies every night, and they were all these older movies, and so you grew up with them. So anyway, I see lots of our friends joining in today.
Yes.
Ron, Follow the Bradleys Fun, who's had the singularly interesting experience of going to the parks and watching rides not run, especially Tiana. But anyway, and then Captain John D was very generous too, and we appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Captain John D, for $20. I know you were trying to super chat on T3PO Live, and unfortunately, for some reason, super chats were not going through for whatever reason. So thankfully, that has been resolved. Awesome stuff. Thank you for pointing that out to me so we can look into it. 2010 was very underrated. Can't wait to hear the genre guys take. Outland is a great Heems space western.
Yeah, Peter Hyams.
Hyams. With Sean Connery too. Great stuff, guys. You just said it too, and I already forgot the pronunciation. Thank you so much, Captain. It'll be on the show in just about a couple of weeks, it looks like. So that's going to be good. Also, too, Around the World in 80 Days coming right after that, I believe.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
The invention of the term cameo role was for Around the World in 80 Days.
Oh,
all
interesting.
those extra stars.
I can't wait. I can't wait to see it. So in that case, it's kind of like it's not too dissimilar from Mad World, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Although in Mad 75% of the names are the actual stars, whereas in Around the World, there's so many people who have two lines or one line or a couple of days work, and one after the next. I mean, the idea, first of all, of David Niven and Natalie Wood and Passepartout Cantinflas being in the Old West is pregnant with potential. But then you throw in everybody from Marlene Dietrich to Frank Sinatra to Joe E. Brown to Sir Cedric Hardwicke to John Carradine, just in that sequence. Fantastic. Anyhow,
that's gonna be amazing to witness and to see you guys, hear you guys talk about it, because always love your perspective. Always thought
Juliet,
that was
yes, of course, the David Niven one, which I would dare to say is the only one. I mean, I like Jackie Chan and I like Pierce Brosnan and all the other people that have done it, but nothing beats that original. So
yeah. I think I would agree with that. I don't know if I saw the Jackie Chan one, but I don't remember it doing very well at the box office.
Yeah,
Nina
well,
has another comment here.
She's talking about Lawrence of Arabia and these ones where they're redoing the classic films with new prints and new restorations, and yeah, they're made to be seen on the big screen, for God's sakes. I don't care how big the screen in your basement is; it's not 150 feet across. They didn't, for example, like one of our first ones for Around the World, or rather for Mad World, build the whole damn theater just for that movie, which they did with the Cinerama Dome in Hollywood. That was built for that film.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense now. I mean, you may have mentioned it,
and they barely got the movie theater finished in time for the premiere of the movie too. But although the great movie I remember seeing the premiere of there later was Ice Station Zebra, which we've also covered. Do you think some guy named Lou has something to do with which movies the genre guys do? Because there have been some great ones that I didn't know and wasn't interested in and discovered. Lauren gave us this movie, The 13th Floor, which, when you talk about Sorcerer failing because of Star Wars, 13th Floor was basically the same concept as The Matrix with a totally different attitude. And it's a great movie, but with nobody in it and no Keanu Reeves, and it ain't gonna beat The Matrix, and they came out almost on top of each other. So
yeah, it's and the visual imagery delivered by the Wachowskis, a lot of risks taken there in a lot of different ways. It's going to be hard to compete with that's for sure. Almost like Sorcerer and Star Wars. Well, different genres, I guess, of film. But no, it's when I look at Mad World, now that you say that frame was so wide. I remember viewing it. I was like, whoa, this is a wide frame movie here. I wouldn't have called that for a film like that. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that explains a whole lot there.
Yeah.
Man, very, very interesting. Very, very cool. Anita, in Lawrence of Arabia, you must see it in huge screen theater. It's breathtaking. Yeah,
Absolutely.
And
of course, Lawrence was really shot in the desert. When we've talked about Lawrence on some of the shows, people have said, yeah, but what about Dr. Zhivago and that great scene in that frozen house with all the ice? It's fiberglass. It was shot in Spain in the summertime. So, surprise.
Yeah, exactly.
Not CGI, just physical, physical reality made to look like something that it is not. So
there you go. Follow the Bradley's Fun. 13th Floor, an excellent movie. Well, I would definitely agree with you had I seen it, but now that Lou has seen it, I'm inspired to track down the film myself. Some of these films, hard to find, by the way, I will say. Ice Station Zebra, great film. Yep, it is on the Genre Guys playlist or podcast.
Hey, has anybody watching in the chat now, because we discovered it and I literally stumbled across it? I wasn't looking for it. Watch the Bollywood Action Jackson movie?
Yes.
Because what a party that is.
I had never seen a Bollywood film before that one, Lou, I will say. And never have. And I gotta be honest with you, I kind of enjoyed my time with it. Like, I wasn't expecting to. I was like, okay, well, this is really something. But I get it now. I understand. I understand why.
Because it has action and music and dance, and it's like Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire and Sean Connery and
Mhm.
James Coburn and Keanu Reeves all got together to do a movie with a score by, I don't know, Aha. Okay. Like the Bond score that they did. But,
Yes.
and it's so many things that I don't care if you do every word being said and I went out and finally found the actual subtitled version for sale and bought it. And
Mhm.
it didn't matter. It didn't matter. I mean, I don't care how much you are into the culture or understand the genre or anything else. When when suddenly these gangsters that are trying to kill each other in India, suddenly he and the girl are in Switzerland against a lake with four guys dressed like white Vegas Elvis impersonators with Hawaiian leis dancing behind them to some crazy song. It's like, what the heck? Where did that, that wouldn't have
It's
been
as
my first
crazy.
guess what the next scene would be.
It's as crazy as Luce describes it. By the way, because they're in the middle of like New
There we
Zealand,
go.
and then you got four guys in Elvis costumes, and they're doing a dance, and you're just like, "What is going on?"
In front of cute little Swiss chalets, the little things that look like the music boxes that have
Yes,
Hansel and Gretel come out and tell you what the weather's going to be. Um,
absolutely. But like, it's kind of funny because it almost knows what it is, and so it kind of plays into that and just having a fun time. I kind of
Yeah.
appreciated that about
and
that
this
film.
particular movie apparently was a flop in India. People didn't think it was strange enough or something. I don't know. But
Well, they said what they say. They said her face didn't, wasn't as expressive as they may have wanted, or at least one
I
of the
don't
lead
know.
women in this film.
I don't know. I thought they were all gorgeous.
Right? Yeah, I mean, they're not bad looking, and
And
that's also
and something else.
Mhm.
They're not all skinny as a rail with 43 nose rings and
Right.
tattoos. They're I don't know how you translate the word Zaftik into Hindi, but Rubenesque, Sahib. Anyway,
No, I it would appear that in India understands the medium by which films are made. You know what I'm saying? They understand their visual medium, and so they really kind of play that up in
and these
astounding ways.
musical production numbers, I mean, there's 40, 50 people in that number.
Yes.
And that isn't
Well,
something they just, well, come on, let's shoot this scene today. They rehearsed that for weeks to have it all
right.
happen the way it happens.
Aren't there like 6 musical performances in this as well?
At least. And any one of them
crazy.
puts any of the music videos of the golden era of TV music videos to shame. But
It's such a crazy thing. Like it's a wild ride. It's a wild movie. I actually had a lot of fun cutting up together and putting in those images. You're gonna have a fun time with that, even if you don't actually pursue the movie, which you should. It's available pretty much everywhere. Definitely recommend a watch. But and I will agree with the other guys that it does take a little while to get going, but once it does, you're kind of in.
Yeah. If you stick around for 20, 30 minutes, you'll watch the rest of it straight through.
Absolutely.
And I
100%.
encountered it late at night and I was about to go to bed. I said, well, I'll take a look at the first 10 minutes and see if it's worth it. And I watched the whole thing all the way through till 4 a.m. So there you go.
There you go. Fantastic. Well, I bring up the genre guys and Sorcerer in particular because it kind of has to deal with, the thumbnail for today's episode being the Paramount lot. As you know, Sorcerer was originally produced by Paramount, but because they had such crazy production problems, delays, and the cost incurred with this was just so outrageous, Lou, I believe Paramount went to another studio in which to get help distributing this and putting this out.
Well, this was the time when they started doing this. When if a project was either too big for one studio to take a risk on, or in some cases, it was like two different studios realized they were both in development on an earthquake movie or a flood movie and they thought there isn't enough room in the market for both of them. They'd make a deal where one would get U.S. distribution and one would get foreign distribution. And then if there was merch, they'd split that certain ways and directions. And finally, when some of them went on as long as this did, largely due to weather, I should say. For example, that bridge, they built that and they shot it and they decided they needed more, but it was gone already because they'd broken it in the movie. And they built it again someplace entirely different in a different country, for God's sakes, because they couldn't get the location back in the other country anymore. And and they were look, anytime you're doing something in what we call the third world, you're dealing with politics and bribes and all the other joys of everybody thinking, well, Hollywood, they got millions. They can leave a few here in my pocket, not in his pocket.
You see the rain, for example, right? To get that kind of rain and it's crazy, guys.
And it's not CGI, it's water.
No, it's water. And these guys are soaked. You're just going like, okay, do we need that much rain in order to convey this scene? And it's like, yes, more rain. Yes to all the rain. And so when you think about that, you think about the logistics of performing something like that, right? Because rain
and
like
more
that,
important,
repeatable.
On a logistical basis, you're not in Hollywood where you can call up the people who make it rain company who do this every day for TV series on the cheap and say, hey, can you send another 3 nozzles out? And what they will say if you're calling them from South America someplace is, yeah, we'll have it there in about 6 weeks. What do you mean 6 weeks? I need it tomorrow night. Well, you're out of luck because the one airline, Fly By Night Air, that serves that town only goes twice a week. And this week it's the pilot's birthday, so he's not going. I mean, that's the kind of level of the only thing in classic Hollywood I can think of, even vaguely similar, would have been the making of African Queen, where they dealt with really difficult places and politics and governments and all the rest of it. So,
right. So this movie, and Roy Scheider, I believe, talks about it and how it was like, I believe the description you used, Lou, on the show was made Jaws look like a picnic just because it was just so hellish in its production and what everybody went through.
And you don't have to go around the world in 80 days or 80 years for that to happen. We did a picture, one of my favorite, don't have to think about it, just ride along and have fun Westerns called Alvarez Kelly with, they shot it. They shot it outside of Baton Rouge, and everybody got sick, and they had to shut it down for a month and come back and do it again. That gets expensive. So,
right. And we've heard that connected to pictures like Raiders of the Lost Ark, for example, right, where a lot of the crew got sick, but apparently Sorcerer was much worse. But very, very, went long. I think he said 10 months, which is crazy to shoot a film that long. It's so insane. Usually you wrap these things up in 60, 90 days at most.
If you're lucky.
Crazy production. So, obviously Paramount has lost a bunch of money or has gone over budget on this thing. They rope in Universal to help them out. And the arrangement, do you know the details or the specifics of that arrangement, Luke?
I have to watch the Genre Guys to remind myself.
Oh, that's true. I believe, to assist with distribution and assist with production, but I guess, one of the studios may not have known whether or not the other one was actually doing promotion for the film, and so it was under promoted as a result.
Right. I thought you were doing it. Well, neither of us did it, and it's out, and nobody knows it's there. So,
whoops.
Anyway,
and but yeah. So, were there any other notable examples, Lou, of studios kind of doing this, where it's like this production gets way out of hand, or goes way over budget, or is a big risk, and another studio joins in?
Well, they try, but then the question becomes, if you were making it yourself, and nobody makes it themselves, they all have investors. They all have, nowadays you watch the opening credits of any movie and there's 17 production companies, and all that means is this one brought $1 million, this one brought $3 million, this one had some locked up money in this country that we were going to get. if you now, after you've started shooting it and you've got all those percentages worked out, and who gets the first dollar and who gets it once it makes so many dollars, how do you wedge a new piece into that puzzle and not have the existing piece to say, I thought I was buying the last piece? It's kind of like the producers only made real. You're selling the movie a few times over, and if it loses money, you're okay because you don't have to pay anybody. But God forbid it makes money, then you're in trouble. So,
well, you say that, Lou. Here's the thing: the one instance that I know of that happening, that I had heard before, I had heard you mention it in Sorcerer, was Titanic. So Titanic, 20th Century obviously is, or Fox at that time was funding that movie, and notoriously went over budget, just went crazy. Everybody thought, I believe, who was it? Was it Variety who had like a countdown to bomb or something in their their weekly newspaper there? I mean, it was just crazy.
Well, and a lot of times you find out after the fact that that's what happened. But when they're reporting on it while you're still making the movie, that's when it gets really embarrassing. The biggest example of that I can think of being Waterworld, where every week it was, what did they blow too much money on now? As I think I mentioned someplace here, when they had all those battles raging out on the ocean just off of Oahu, and they had 30 cal machine guns on Sea-Doos, pursuing each other. Now they're not shooting bullets, but there's still cartridges coming out of the machine, fanning off into the water. Sure. Well, it turns out because of environmental concerns, they hired hard hat salvage divers to go down every day after they were done shooting to pick up all the cartridges. That's
so insane.
That's
That's so crazy. Think about that, Lou. That's insane. We always hear that like Disneyland attractions, for example, like Submarine Voyage, one of the very most expensive costs incurred with that attraction is because you had to have divers to maintain some of those sets and pieces and so forth. And one of the things that they wanted to avoid with World of Color, for example, as opposed to the Bellagio fountains, was okay, this platform's going to lift so that we don't have to send divers down. Didn't quite work out the way they wanted, but c'est la vie. Anyway, Waterworld, an amazing production in terms of just the amount of resources funding it. Yeah, Universal took a big loss on that one, but Titanic was just a Titanic in size, scope, and budget, and so they tapped Paramount, and I believe the deal was that Paramount handled, I want to say the North American distribution, while Fox retained the international distribution rights to Titanic. I want to say that's how it worked.
I don't remember what the deal was on that, but I do know that not everybody, even within the studios that made it, had hopes for it to make that kind of money. Because let's face it, it's a downer. Everybody dies.
Well, yes.
and going into the theater, that. Spoiler alert, the ship sinks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, how do you make something like that compelling when everybody kind of knows?
That you have to make the romance bigger than the billions of dollars worth of sets and props and that rotating arm and all the stuff they built down in Baja to make the ship sink.
Right.
Which was used again in Master and Commander, by the way.
Well, that's kind of what I find very interesting about that, right? Because I think James Cameron, he understood, that's the hook. That's what gets people in. That's what people are going to really resonate with. But for himself, though, he was really big into the ship itself. He was big into the wreck and how it completely, collapsed and fell apart. Because he was a deep sea diver at that point and did a lot of deep sea diving for that production, which, partially why it's so expensive. But he was really interested in the ship. But he always had the audience first and foremost in his mind, and that's why it was a huge success, because I believe he did cater that film towards that end to some degree. Something we don't find a lot in today's films, Lou. It's always, I think you described it before as well. It's always like, well, we need a reason to do this scene that I want, and it becomes this just kind of catastrophe. story wise, dialogue wise, writing wise, everything else. We see that with modern productions all the time. I'm not going to say the word, Lou. Don't worry, but
Well,
a particular show comes to mind.
but we want people to care about. First, put them in the context of a disaster,
Right.
of Towering Inferno or Earthquake or
Mm-hmm.
any of those movies. Great. But if everybody's secondary to the machines, well, there you go.
Oh, Juliet with the some answers here. Titanic, USA, Canada, Paramount, rest of the world, Fox, BBC for TV rights. Yeah, I've heard it's kind of that dual-headed structure there for that film because it was.
Then we get into the inside the studio politics of the money. For example, if it is a 20th Century Fox movie and it's distributed on DVD and VHS and whatever by 20th Century Fox Home Video, whose percentage is whose? It's all one part of the theater of the studio taking money out of one pocket and putting it into the other pocket, and who gets a piece of the action as it moves?
Yeah, and you'll remember Titanic came out with those. What is it? The dual VHS bundle right there because the film was actually so long. It needed 2 VHSs in order to make it all fit. Who produces that and who gets, like you said, Lou, who gets the royalties on that one?
I take it from an artistic point of view. I'll never forget one of the first movies that came out with 2 VHS cassettes was the movie of Sleuth, which is a great movie and a great play. But where do you break it? If you got to get the last 10 or 15 minutes onto the second disc or the second cassette, do you do it that way with 10 or 15, or do you do it with 30 because there's some natural places to break and not so natural? It's like when they first started inserting commercials into streaming, and right in the middle of a scene, right in the middle of a sentence, it would suddenly break.
Crazy.
So
great. Well, and you've talked about it before, Lou, as well, with the commercial breaks. You know, you were under production at one point and you saw 9 time codes attached to
because they didn't know exactly which slot of the night it was going to go into.
Right.
Crazy. That was a good show. I'm so sad that show didn't make it. Anyway. But no, Disney Fan 55 has been so generous.
55, very much appreciated. Thank you so much. That's Mom there. Thank you very much, Mom. Very much appreciate that. $5. Thank you, Lou and Vash, for another fantastic show. Well, thank you to you indeed. It's interesting because while I was in Palm Springs, right at the very tail end of the show, Disney Fan 55 also super chatting, and I did not pick that up. I believe it was something about Palm Springs.
Double thanks.
Double thanks indeed.
And this is interesting. Hollywood Western classic movie. My question. Horse running important. Why is this the reason I love Hollywood? Well, I'm not sure how to answer that because I'm not sure what the question. Do I love the horses? Absolutely. And it's something that translates. Obviously, what was that movie? Why can't I think of the name of the movie with Viggo Mortensen, where he's in a horse race in Arabia with an American horse? Yeah, Hidalgo.
Okay.
Or that one with Candy Bergen and Bite the Bullet with Gene Hackman with the race.
Let's see here.
Have I ever done a film noir show? Well, some of them weren't intended to be, but were.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point.
Nita, as far as the actual shows I personally have been involved in the production of, which again we don't get too detailed about on here, mostly I did sitcoms. Oh, there's Hidalgo. Yes, of course. That's a good movie. And Laura, Laura. Yeah. Well, look. Just think about this, everybody. If I had, if Juliet asked her, what about these 10 years and made it the most recent 10 years, Could you get 100 that were worth putting on that list?
Oh, that'd be a struggle, Lou. I'm gonna
I
be honest.
guess my point is, Brendan Grace talks about the original Sleuth versus the remake. You're absolutely right. Your dad is right. The first one is brilliant. Second one is lousy. But but the play was even better. I remember seeing the play several times. Is there a remake? Well, actually, there are, and this is another one of those ones that people disagree with me on, Vash. So we get several of them in the same show.
Oh, here we go.
I happen to like, for different reasons, both versions of Total Recall.
I can see that.
I went to the second one thinking, oh, this is never going to be the one with Arnold. And it's not. And it's really good. And if all there was it, you would still say that's a good movie. It doesn't have the surprisingly as polished as the original is. It's crude compared to the second one. Musically, titles, everything. But it's a great picture. You can't deny it. So
right. I mean, if you're taking the source material and you're going, okay, let's go ahead and do our own kind of take on it and really make it a great picture in and of itself, then yeah, I think it could live beside the original. And so I don't think that's a bad take at all, Lou. I think I agree with you on that sentiment.
I hate, and it happens more often than not, that they will do a feature either based on a popular TV show or as a remake of a prior feature. And they'll do it because, everybody loved that. And the first thing they do is let's take everything everybody loved out of it. And my two classic examples that happen to be Westerns are Maverick and The Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
Great TV shows. So what's the first thing they do? Well, let's get rid of the theme song, and let's get rid of the characters, and let's get rid of the plot, and let's cast it wrong. And after that, everybody. I thought the recent feature of A Man from U.N.C.L.E. was awful compared to the original, but so that's the way it is.
Well, that's the thing, right? You definitely have to have some recalls or Total Recall. You definitely have to have some callbacks to that original piece. At least capture maybe the spirit of why people love the original so much. Can't go too off on your own direction, but it's not a bad take, though. I do agree with your take on that. Nita asks, Vash, do you like film noir? I actually do very much like film noir. I think it's a really interesting genre and one that I think could see a resurgence, and kind of has in some ways. Obviously, now it's more of the thriller aspect or the mystery aspect, but I think film noir is an awesome genre.
And by the way, Nita, if you like film noir, you will really like The 13th Floor. It's a science fiction, cyber thriller, mystery film noir movie. It's an interesting mix of those styles.
That's so cool. That's great. I cannot wait to see that film. Very, very interested indeed. Yes, you know what? I do agree with you, Nita. Very much so. Jan Monroe, great.
Wait, Josh said he liked the Will Smith Wild Wild West. You know what, Josh? Give it a different title, and maybe it's an okay movie. I personally didn't think it was very good anyway, but it's not the Wild Wild West. It just isn't. Right. And when you consider that the Wild Wild West was, as some people called it, James Bond in the Old West, or The Man from U.N.C.L.E. in the Old West, but it still had its own charm. So,
yeah, I think there are some. I'll see this, Josh Hammond. I think we were talking about Van Helsing the other day. Obviously, Wild Wild West didn't do that very well at the box office, and is reviled by critics in general. But there's some good stuff in there. I will say, like not all of it was great, but there's some fun stuff. So I'll agree with you on that.
I mean, there is a point at which saying yeah, we're going to do the remake of the old original, but we're going to take our own take on it.
Yeah.
That's okay. And then there's the point of, oh God, she's being stalked by the prince, and she doesn't need romance and
Yeah.
weird those old sexist,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
suddenly,
Or we're gonna put a big mechanical spider in it.
oh, there you go.
But yes, I do agree with you. So this is interesting about the animated remakes. So I think the animated remakes probably do have to be much closer to those original films.
Well, there's
The
also
animated films.
there tends to be a couple of years maybe
Yeah,
between the first and the remake, which is too
tend to
soon.
be, yes.
Which is
Yeah,
just too soon.
it is. It is.
On the other hand, there was a lot of efforts that never came off to do a sequel to Gone with the Wind, or a sequel to and then look at it. Never ceases to amaze me how certain actors become entirely transformed. Did you ever really think, when you saw Bill and Ted's, that Keanu would become a serious action star? Was that the
Yeah,
kind of
I
guy you saw in your mind's eye as being,
wouldn't have called it.
yeah?
Wouldn't have called it.
But he made it work. So there, go figure.
And he did.
I've always said, certain actors who get it, who kind of get what they're about to the public and stay true to it,
Yeah.
have very long, healthy careers. I've always said William Shatner, for a long time at the beginning, he didn't get the joke about him. And once he did, that's how you get Denny Crane. It's getting the joke about Captain Kirk.
Right. And he's had a prolific career, I think, ever since, kind of embracing that side of himself. And
or you transition.
Music albums and stuff. It's crazy.
If you want to see one of the most important, really important movies, also a very good, fun movie, that you never probably heard of, or if you did, you thought, oh, it's just another one of those middle year Westerns. You go see, or turn on your streamer or whatever, a picture called The Comancheros, which is the movie where John Wayne went from the romantic leading man who gets the girl hero to the elder statesman advisor to the romantic leading man who gets the hero, Stuart Whitman in that case. And it changed his career. It made him viable as his physical status got older,
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting transition to make, and one that was probably overdue. I remember you telling me a film in which they had John Wayne hook up with who could have been his granddaughter at that point.
Well, yeah.
Which was a little strange.
That's there's a funny story that Barbie Benton, if you remember who she was, told about dating Hugh Hefner. She was a bunny girl, and then she dated the boss. And at the end of the first evening, he asked if he could, come back inside with her. And she demurely refused and said maybe later. And he was sort of surprised. He thought everybody knew, you ended that evening with him in a certain way. And supposedly she said to him, it was a lovely evening and you're a nice man and we had a great time. But you have to understand, I've never really dated anybody under 25 before, or over 25 before, rather.
Right.
And Hefner smiled and said, well, neither have I. So, there's that.
Oh, that's amazing. It's like Leonardo DiCaprio. That's incredible right there. That's well,
and look at the continuity. All right, look down there at the bottom.
Sure.
Michael Curtiz, a Hungarian import, famous for, among other things, do you know what movies he made? The Errol Flynn Robin Hood.
Ooh.
Casablanca. And The Comancheros. Go figure.
Wow. Strange.
Because, these guys, they were you're next. You take this one. You're next. You take this one. It was a factory.
Yeah.
So
It was the factory.
and they knew how to do it. So there you go.
They knew how to do it.
It's a fun picture, and Lee Marvin is hilarious in this movie.
Really?
Oh yeah.
That's great. I gotta see it. I gotta check it out. I have a John Wayne collection. I have to actually sit and get cozy with. You referenced Keanu Reeves before, and I do agree with you. You see Bill and Ted's, and you're like, I can't see him past Bill and Ted's. Then you see The Matrix, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't even see him past Neo. And then you see John Wick, and now the same thing has happened again, where you just can't see somebody past that role.
Yeah,
it's very interesting to see the actors who become famous for one thing, but really embody.
Well, the classic, of course, because he actively rejected it, although it was less about being typecast as it was that he just hated the publicity and the BS that went with the part, was Connery for Bond.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the one that really, really killed it for him was the one in Japan, where the paparazzi made his life a living hell during the making of that movie. He and his wife. And so, he's
the Japanese
I'll do something else. Yeah.
They can be very enthusiastic. But I would argue that too, he kind of got the joke of eventually.
Oh, sure.
His portrayal of an elder kind of Bond type person. It's a little bit bumbling for Last Crusade.
Yeah,
Jones' Last Crusade. I thought was brilliant casting.
Yeah.
And an amazing performance. So good.
In a movie, in a genre where you do not go to that movie to see great acting. You get it from him, from Ford, from everybody, but you don't go for that. You go for the spectacle.
You do. And at the end of that movie, you're going, wow, like that was kind of an emotional journey, more than I expected. And that scene where, he's trying to get the grail, he's got him by the hand, and he's like, Indiana, let go. That whole thing is just.
That has so many that moment. He chose poorly.
Gotta get that clip. So good. Good.
I see where. Did you see where Michael Keaton is going to change his name? I see Josh talking about it's Michael Keaton being Mr. Mom and then Batman. But he's gonna take his real name back, whatever it was. I forget what it was now. But,
Michael Douglas, I believe.
Yeah, something like that.
So he's gonna be Michael Keaton Douglas.
Yeah. So. Although it's funny, it just happened I guess it was today or yesterday, I came across some clip of him giving a talk to a bunch of actors and at a college someplace. And he said, thank you very much. And before I go, I'm just going to leave you with 2 words that have become some of the most important words of my career. And I hope you get 2 words like I got these 2 words. Are you ready?
Sure.
And he went, I'm Batman. I'm Batman. Exactly. So there you go.
No, it's true. It's true. A character actor in himself. A lot of people didn't, when they heard the casting of Michael Keaton, a lot of people didn't buy in, but man, really embodied a role. Let's get nuts. That's the one I take away from that. So funny. Let's see here. Josh Hammond, Last Crusade is funny because of the banter between Sean Connery and Harrison Ford.
Sure, absolutely.
And I will say, that was kind of a response to Temple of Doom, which I'm sure you know, Lou, but both
it got a little grim.
It got a little grim, and one of the reasons was because Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were both going through their divorces, and apparently, obviously that affected them, and they kind of imbued that in the film.
Okay, if you say so. Meanwhile, you got to make the movie. It's
right, and it was dark.
Interestingly enough, I think Spielberg has been at his least when he's done things that are very personal. That recent one that was supposedly about his childhood.
Yeah.
It just sometimes you need a little distance from the material. So
You know what? I agree with this. What about like AI? Remember, he was a big Stanley
Yeah.
Kubrick fan.
Yeah.
Wanted to bring that to reality and just did not work at all.
Yep.
So I agree with you on this. The personal films, he gets sidetracked. But response to that responded with a more comedic tone in A Last Crusade. Actually worked really, really well. Some people might say maybe a little too comedic in some edges, but I think it's a great film and one of the very
let's
best.
put it this way. The next one, for all its faults, made the most recent one look like,
Citizen Kane, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, man. Ooh, not good at all. But
I mean, I'll take him hiding in a refrigerator from an atomic bomb any day of the week than just the bomb.
How do you do it, Lou? How do you do that? That was on the fly, guys. You got to be impressed. No, it's.
If I was working hard to do this, I'd be impressed too. It's just a reflex, right? Some people just hear the music of the language a little bit differently and have no self-control and spout it out in public this way, like I do every week. But
I like to say, Lou, you're not a. It's not a comedic warehouse; it's a comedic factory. You just pump them out.
What was the line I put in our backstage stuff with everybody? They were talking about all these variations on the same theme over and over, and I said, "Well, I will say this, and I will coin it here first, and now second for the rest of you." As they say, if at verse you don't succeed, multi again. Okay, so this idea of, well, that didn't work. Let's start all over again with multiverse number 432. And what the heck? It's only a movie, folks. It's only a movie.
Yeah, only a movie. Let's see.
Josh Hammond says, I love my Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. No, Josh, you just like blonde Russian dominatrixes, but we won't say that to everybody. Anyway.
That's great.
Thank you, Nita. You have a great week too.
Oh, thank you so much, Nita. Very much appreciate it. Thank you. Again, unbelievably generous, and cannot thank you enough. And that kind of, that's a good point in which to point out, hey, if you want to have any questions answered, go ahead and put them in the chat. We're going to rounding the show down here, folks. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible, first football Sunday of the season right there. Thank you for spending your time with us.
I was born without the sports gene. So.
It's all right, Lou. That's
not entirely, but anyway, who doesn't like a good rousing game of tiddlywinks? Especially full contact tiddlywinks, but
full contact tiddlywinks.
Australian rules tiddlywinks. I don't know.
Josh Hammond, Kate Blanchett was cute, but the alien stuff was cool to me. Yeah, Kate Blanchett actually did pretty well in that role. I know she got some heat at the time, but I thought she embodied it well. Just the story was maybe, it just didn't live up to the source material, which was unfortunate. Also,
you'll notice that after that movie, suddenly nobody was asking, "Where's the La Beef?"
Yeah. Oh, that's
all right. That was a stretch, but I just,
that's pretty good though. That's pretty good.
I was about to say, at the wall and see what sticks is the way I put it.
Where was the La Beef? So that's an interesting one. I still have problems with that casting, that's for sure. But I really have problems with them just saying, "Oh, he just I think died in Vietnam." I think is the canon story in 5. Oh, that's terrible. Come on, you can't just kill him off like that.
Especially because it sounds like a bunch of people sitting around the quote unquote writer's room. And how are we going to explain that he's not? I know. How about he died in Vietnam? Yeah, that's it. Next, how are we going to do? That's not how writing works when it works. It works
absolutely
because you don't have to ask the "but how do we's" because they follow from the previous "how did we," and they follow from the previous one before that. And it just, in other words, if you've built the character right, they write their own words.
I
I've always said about screenplays
yeah.
that when you watch a movie and it isn't working, there's lots of reasons why it isn't working, maybe. But the
Mhm.
first one is everybody's talking with the same voice.
Yes.
Everybody has the music. It's
Yeah.
music. Language is music, and we can't all be Mozart, but we don't have to be Milli Vanilli either. So
Well, you can't be playing your own song. If you're part of a symphony, you really got to be in sync. And I do agree with you. You have to portray these characters in the way that maybe not in the way the audiences will expect, but in the ways that's consistent with their character. I think a lot of people get the most upset when you have people do something out of character. For example,
well,
Luke Skywalker in Last Jedi, right? I think that's the pinnacle of that example.
yeah,
It's like, well, Luke wouldn't do that.
yeah. I, I told you about that book full of memos
Mhm.
from the studio execs to showrunners and writers on TV shows.
I
The
don't think you
title
have.
being the greatest anecdote in it on the great classic Ray Walston and Bill Bixby show, My
Mhm.
Favorite Martian. And the network sent back a note on some line of dialogue that said, quote, "A Martian wouldn't say that."
I never
And
heard
they
that
said,
one.
how would you know?
Yeah,
But
exactly. How would you know? But in that case, it's like, okay, you have somebody who has built a reputation via the fans who have embraced those films for what 40 years. So you kind of have an understanding in your mind what that character kind of would do, what they wouldn't do. And so to do something so anti that character in that he's looking to perhaps murder his son over a dream, it's like you now you can't even make sense of it. You can't even begin to take that in because
and
it's
it
so.
comes from somebody, the writer, the
Yep.
actor, the director, saying,
Mhm.
well, everybody's expecting him to be this way. Let's do something different,
Exactly. Subvert
which is
expectations.
always a bad reason. Okay. It's always a bad reason. If it's a new
Yes.
character that you're introducing into the whole scheme of things in that episode, in that
Hmm.
particular show, swell.
Hmm.
But if
Yeah.
it's somebody that the audience has come to expect to be a certain way, uh, you know,
Right.
all you're doing is, first of all, you're making everybody watching it go, wait, what did he say?
Mhm.
Which takes you out of the story right away. Right away, right away, you're talking about the scenery and not about the characters. You're
Correct.
talking about the mechanics and not the soul,
Right.
uh, which is always bad. Okay, it's always
Yeah.
bad. Well, talk about Hitchcock. If anybody has seen what I think is a highly overlooked, his finale really was a thing
Mhm.
called Family Plot, and in it there's a bit where Bruce Stern, who's one of the main characters, is driving, and the bad guy has uh, messed with the brakes on the car, and they're on a mountain road, and it's another one of these harrowing. I haven't got any brakes, and I'm going down a mountain road like crazy. The entire scene is shot, except for two pieces, the very beginning and the very end,
Mhm.
from inside the car, looking out.
Ooh.
You never have the standard shot of the car wheeling around a corner, shot of the car hitting an incline and bouncing over. It doesn't happen. It happens, but you only see it from Dern's POV as the driver of the car. And
That's an interesting way to tell
Dern
that.
Dern talked about in the special features, if you get the right version of it, about that and about how Hitch explained to him that that's what the audience wanted to feel, was what you were feeling. And the way you do that is by only showing this, only, not as an insert, but only showing this entire crazy car crash scene from the point of view of the driver of the car.
Wow.
And, that's different. That's unusual. That's unexpected,
Sure.
but it fits and it works because he committed to doing it. A
Yeah.
lesser person would have had, well, let's put in one shot of his eyes going wide and his hand on
Right.
the stick shift or whatever, and then we'll go back to the action again. Because
Yeah.
hey, it's an action scene, it's got to pay off. Well, it also saved them about 2 weeks of being up on that road shooting the car because we never had to do it, never had to see it, just had to see what it would look like if. So that's a
It,
wonderful movie, by the way. That's one we should do on Genre Guys. If nobody's
that.
seen it, and the person who it really, you notice they're not in the pictures anywhere on those posters, but the
Uh-huh.
person who it really, I think, made a kind of a minor star of in a new way, because before that he had famously played JFK in a movie about the president. But
Hmm.
William Devane is
Oh,
so wonderfully sleazy in that movie. He is such a wonderful, oh God, what a wonderful crook. Anyway,
wow. That is
that's a
absolutely
fun
incredible.
picture. Have you seen that one?
I have not. I gotta check this out
Well,
now.
you now must, but
I absolutely must. I'm taking notes as we're going along here.
oh well. Anyway,
Of the things I gotta.
that's
other
that's
things I
a
gotta do.
that's a get your popcorn and your soda and turn it on some night movie. It really is.
Oh, I gotta check it out. I will check it out now. Your recommendations are amazing, and that final scene reminds me of like almost like a POV shot in Doom, if you remember that. But
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
like
yeah.
you know. But that's a much better interpretation of that idea. Can't wait to check that out. And there are ways to subvert expectations correctly. There are ways to develop characters in a way in which they do things
Well,
maybe that
and,
are uncharacteristic of them. But you have to be nuanced about it.
but they also sometimes feel so obligated.
Right.
Well, we got to put, for example, I happen to be a fairly experienced student of history, and particularly of World War II and that era. Uh,
Absolutely.
and the not the more recent one, which was very well done, and which had Woody Harrelson surprisingly to me good as Admiral Nimitz of Midway, but not that one. The previous one from Universal that was one of these Sense-Around movies with Chuck Heston
Right.
and everybody, you know.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
But they
Yep.
had to throw in this stupid romantic love interest plot thing that had nothing to do with the battle because, hey, we have to do something more than just history. Well, it doesn't work. It can't work. It never would work. Um, but they do it because they think they have to. So,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. That's obviously Henry Fonda as Nimitz. And you've got, who else is in there? Coburn and, well, all those guys. And Toshiro Mifune as the beaver. No, as Yamamoto. But
Well,
Mitchum as Halsey and Glenn Ford as
they
Ray Spruance and
they did something similar, I think, with the kind of forced love story, Pearl Harbor, I believe, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But you
Oh,
see, in that there are enough. There's enough. Pardon the expression. I don't mean it the way it sounds in that context. Bodies to say, well, let's do something about an average sailor or airman or whatever who was there, and you're not stepping on anybody. But in this, you're inserting Heston as somebody who didn't exist, with a son who's fallen in love with a Japanese girl, and they're under investigation because it's, you know, the war and all that sort of thing.
sure.
But anyway, but it's a great picture anyway, and
And
great music, by the way, from John. So you know, there's another one
and
if you feel like a war movie tonight. But
ooh, maybe that's the one. There is a way to do, I think, good romance in a World War II era film like that. I think the best example I can think of at the top of my head, Hacksaw Ridge.
yeah,
Really,
yeah.
really strong film by Mel Gibson. There. Okay, so I
Well,
think that
we're
just
rattling
about,
on and on again as usual. I didn't mean to stretch it, but
But you know what, Lou? People have a fun time with it. I have a fun time with it, so that's all that matters. All that matters is you're having fun, and people are loving it. People love this show. People love the Genre Guys. So please, Lou, I think you've gone over quite a bit of what you got coming up here, which is absolutely incredible. And if you
I don't
guys
know
want
what's
to,
next because we're still that was the assignment I gave Hangry at
Uh-huh.
the end of our conclave last night, was you, for God's sakes, put about a dozen down as a schedule so we know. Because for a while there, we got a kind of weird schedule going on because we did 2 at a time to put some in the can
Sure.
because he was going out of town. And, folks, I appreciate everybody who even listens to anything I've got to say because, as I half joking, half seriously say, my wife's heard all these stories 100 times already and
Mhm.
rightly doesn't give a damn anymore. but But those of you who are moved to, first of all, subscribe so that you find out about them and get notifications when they work. And this isn't the only set of channels that are having trouble with that lately, by the way, Vash. I've seen several people I know who suddenly said, where the hell are the notifications? So,
Yeah.
but those of you, and it doesn't have to be these spectacular $100 extravaganzas. That's a few people who are able to do. Those of you who contribute a little bit to this, I don't get a dime out of this. My grand total swag from this entire experience now for these past, 6, 7, 8 months I've been doing this now with you guys, has been a really good glass of scotch that Pro bought once. But these guys like Vash and Jonas and Pro and Culture and then beyond that, Valiant and Mexican Iron Man and all the rest of them. There's a lot of work behind the scenes getting this stuff ready for you. It isn't as if we just turn on the microphone and say whatever comes into our head. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Yes, I do. But Vash doesn't. He prepares. And he takes, and if you saw him, if we took that shot you're seeing of him now, back about 5 feet, he looks like he holds his keyboard. Show him. You don't have it on a desk.
Yeah,
he
no.
holds it right there and brings up all of these pictures and all of these links and all of the. He's the Jimi Hendrix of that keyboard, standing there in his blue nightclub, playing the solos that make all of this work. Anyway, they put in a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of hours, and there's some work going on here. It isn't just a bunch of people with egos and time to kill. So
No,
I acknowledge that, and I appreciate those of you who are able to do so.
Lou, you're the greatest. Thank you so much for that. That's an amazing, just an amazing compliment, amazing soliloquy that describes exactly what we do. We try to really endeavor to put on the best show that we possibly can for you, and Lou is definitely part of that. And so
and we don't
put
put things out until we've got them nailed down.
Yep.
I start hearing about some of the stories they're working on. There's one now that got me so angry, that got me so amazingly angry, as I think it will all of you when you hear it. But rather than just put it out, we're checking it up and crossing the T's and dotting the I's to make sure we don't get out in front of our skis on it. But I'll tell you what, I could do another hour on the management, quote unquote. It's a couple of these companies, and one in particular we all know and used to love. And we don't like having to share so much negativity. We don't. People say we do. I don't. But, the world changes, and they may be taking Disney World away from us. But across town, the other guys who got it wrong for a long time are getting it right to degrees that I think are going to amaze even those of us who think it's going to be good over at Epic. Anyway, all I'm saying is we're glad you care. We're glad you care enough to share your valuable time with you. And we will not always be brilliant, and we will not always be perfect, and we will not always be stimulating and wonderful and funny and charming and beautiful, even if we think we are. But, or if, as Vash says, I am, which I don't know. But we will always try to be, and we will always respect your time. And make sure, the phrase I've used for my whole career in journalistic pursuits, make sure that something is genuinely useful. Genuinely useful. So
Yep.
if we are that to you, we've done our job. And if we aren't, tell us how. And meanwhile, you want to give them the email address to send in questions and all that stuff?
I do. 23ponline at yahoo.com is where you can actually send your questions. Actually, some people send in some other stuff via that email. All safe stuff, but stuff regarding some stories, stuff regarding the movies that we've featured and some of the history that we've featured. So please go ahead, keep that coming in, and we will feature it on this show. That is for sure. Thank you so much for all the support. As Lou says, you are really what makes these shows possible. Everything you do, as little as a subscribe, to a like, to a super chat, to whatever, everything absolutely helps. So if you like this video, please like this video. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. It is awesome content, folks, coming out every single day here on this channel. You just heard the Genre Guys, Holly Backlot with Lou and you, T3PO live, by the way, at 2:30 p.m. on Eastern on Tuesdays. We're going to feature a lot of those amazing stories that Lou was talking about. So please go ahead and tune into that. And, well, I think that just about wraps us up. Thank you so much for your support, and we will see you all next time here on Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Lou? Sign
I'm
off.
waiting
Okay.
for you to push the button. You've said it all.
All right. I just wanted to make sure. Oh, and
Push
then
the button, Max.
Pro's in the chat. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you later.